Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has probably one of the most important congressional election races in the country, which is funny because she probably shouldn't. She's not like Nancy Pelosi or Adam Schiff. She's just the New York's 14th district congressperson, but because she's so famous, because she's high profile, it's quickly becoming one of the biggest and most important Democratic races, and it might actually symbolize who will win in this great battle between the far left and the moderate Democrats. Ocasio-Cortez is facing around a dozen challengers, and she is going in full on, well, I don't want to say she's panicking. She's going on the offensive and calling for extreme measures, quadrupling voter turnout. She needs to get 60,000 votes, she says, in the primary, where last time she only got about 17,000. Now, there's a couple arguments as to why the multitude of competitors might help her. But I think considering this is a special primary election, considering how few votes she got last time, I think AOC is facing a potential defeat. It's hard to know for sure, but she's definitely going on the offensive. And it's also important to point out, she's got $5.3 million to dump in her district for reelection. She's got 6 million plus followers on Twitter. Not like that necessarily matters because only 2% of the population is actually on Twitter. But that name recognition is really going to help her. I want to show you some stuff, and I also want to show you how the polls were treating her. Recently, last year, a poll came out from swing states showing her approval rating was like 22%, really bad. Now, in her district, I don't have those numbers, but I want to be fair. I think she has a real shot at winning this, but there is a strong potential she loses because of the huge fight she's facing. Let's read the story from Fox News. AOC calls for turnout machine as 12 Democratic rivals eye her House seat. Despite her massive national media presence, it appears U.S. Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, DNY, isn't taking re-election for granted. At a Saturday kickoff event in her bid for a second term, the far-left freshman congresswoman told supporters she wanted to see voter turnout in New York's 14th district increase by 4 times over her previous run in 2018. No fewer than 12 Democrats have filed in the district to run against Ocasio-Cortez in the primary election on June 23rd, according to radio station WINS of New York City. In addition, at least 3 Republicans will vie for a chance to ultimately win the seat. She said last election cycle, in the primary, as we know, the turnout was quite low. This year, we want to multiply turnout by 4 times. That's our goal. We want to secure 60,000 votes in the primary election. We need to start creating a turnout machine right now. I got bad news for the mainstream Democrats. I think she could actually pull it off. I mean, she's going to flood ads in New York City with all the money she's got, and she's already got the name recognition. She's bombastic. She says nonsensical things. Dare I say she is a mini Trump. She says things that generate press because they're stupid or controversial, and then she builds up more name recognition. And a lot of people who are also stupid and think nonsensical things or believe her pipe dream, hopes and dreams type policies, they're going to say, yes, she's the person I'm going to vote for. It's going to work out really well for her. It's kind of a bummer that things play that way, but hey, that's how it goes. Ocasio-Cortez, 30, sent shockwaves to the political world when she won. Yeah, we don't care about that. She said, I think everyone has a right to run. I, of course, won my seat with a primary. I would never begrudge anyone trying to run in a primary. I'm committed to organizing. And that brings me to some data. First, swing state approval is not the same as the approval rating in a district like NY14, which is probably very, very blue. However, the far left is not the overwhelming majority of this country, which is why I think AOC is facing potential pitfalls with the massive number of people running against her. In this poll from Axios, they say, taken in May, so this is from a while ago. This is from, let me see the date on this one. July 14th, 2019. They say the poll was taken in May, before Speaker Pelosi's latest run-in with AOC and the 3 other liberal House freshman members known as the Squad, included 1,003 likely general election voters, blah, blah, blah. So here's what they found. Ocasio-Cortez was recognized by 74% of voters in the poll. 22% had a favorable view. The last poll I saw from her own district had her just over 50%, which is interesting because I don't know how that will play out. But if her approval rating is that high, the question then becomes, how much do these people really care about her or just getting a Democrat in office, in which case there may be very few activist votes. Let's jump over to Ballotpedia, and I want to show you this data from the primary race. AOC won not because she was actually a good candidate necessarily. She won because, as Nancy Pelosi said, you could slap a D on a glass of water in the district and you will win. But in AOC's district, she ran an insurgency campaign against the Democratic establishment, challenging Joe Crowley in a primary and winning just about 4,000 more votes than he did. Joe Crowley had the name recognition. He was the fourth most powerful Democrat in Congress. He lost the primary. Now, he wasn't anywhere near as famous as AOC is now, but I do think there's some reason to believe name recognition will not be enough. Clout will not be enough. AOC's got activist people on Twitter, and she's making a lot of money from outside of her district. This is where things start to get bad. There was a report that came out several months ago, last year, showing that Ocasio-Cortez actually has raised very little from her own district. It's probable that number went up. Now, most of her donors are grassroots. She does have a decent amount of people who donate over $200, I believe the threshold is. But it's also a concern that her higher, larger donation amounts aren't coming from within her district. And that's disproportionate to basically every other person in Congress, which means she might not actually have any support from her own district. And there have been stories about how people say that she neglects them. She's never there, and she's more interested in being a celebrity. After she won the primary with only 16,898 votes, she went on to win the general with 110,318 votes, 78.2% of the vote. However, my understanding is that she was in a D+30 district. I could be wrong. I thought it was D+29. Okay, check it out. Cook Partisan Voter Index is D+29. She just missed that. So it's probably not fair to say she underperformed a lot, but it is a 0.8% underperformance to a certain degree. I don't think it really matters, though. Like Nancy Pelosi said, you slap a D on a glass, people are going to vote for him in that district. The bigger question is, she didn't actually win over the hearts and minds of the people in her district. They just voted for her because what's going to matter is winning over the hearts and minds in a primary, which brings me to why I think she has a good chance to win for one reason. But considering how few votes she got, I think there's actually a good reason to suggest she's in trouble. And that's why she's trying to quadruple her voter turnout. Right now at Ballotpedia, we can see that they're listing all of these primary candidates. The Republican primary looks nuts. Now, Fox News said there was like 12 Democratic primary challengers. I think they might be confusing that. We can see we've got AOC as the incumbent, Fernando Cabrera, Michelle Caruso Cabrera, James Dillon, Badrin Khan, and Jose Velasquez. These are all people running. So right now she's got five opponents. One of which, Michelle Caruso Cabrera, was an anchor for CNBC and also has decent local name recognition. Now, she's only got around 70,000 or so followers on Twitter, but I don't know if Twitter is going to play a big role in this. I mean, there's reason to believe with that many followers on Twitter, because AOC's got like 6 million, she's very, very famous in the Democratic Party, and she's going to rally a lot of progressives. But I turn back. This is why I think this is bad news for her. Bad news for AOC. First, I'll point out what a lot of people have said is all of these primary candidates are splitting the vote, making it easier for Ocasio-Cortez to win. And that's a fair point. That's actually where my mind was only a few minutes before I was recording this. I'm like, man, I don't know. Sounds like that might help her. Think about it. If you have a bunch of people who are trying to just unseat AOC and they divide up 40,000 votes among themselves, and AOC ends up getting that 60,000 or whatever. Or I shouldn't say that. Let's say 61,000 people vote for the other candidates split up, and 60,000 vote for AOC. AOC wins. That's the problem with the Democratic primaries at the national level, with people like Bloomberg, Biden, and Buttigieg and Klobuchar are splitting up the moderate vote, giving Bernie Sanders, letting him just squeak past with a major victory. A lot of people don't seem to understand that in the Democratic primary nationally, In New Hampshire, I believe it was, 53% of the vote was for a moderate candidate. And Bernie Sanders only got around 25. We don't know exactly where the numbers will fall when the other moderates start, dropping out because they're losing. But it's fair to say the bigger number will go to the moderate candidate. The same could be true and now I'll move on to why I think this is actually bad news. Again, fair to say they're going to split the vote. But according to that Hidden Tribes report that I love to show oh so often, only 8% of this country is a progressive activist. I'm sure when you look at New York's 14, there is a substantially higher percentage of progressives and far left and socialist because it's a blue district. Most people there are Democrats, so you're really, zooming in on the microcosm, right? But you have substantially more moderates. And I'd be willing to bet there are a lot of people who are moderate Democrats who are angered by AOC, which brings me to why this is bad news. The fact that all of these Democrats are trying to unseat her shows there is a massive movement against her. And if progressives make up only 8% of the national, population, if we zoom in and we isolate only the left, according to the Hidden Tribes report, you do have a large percentage. However, you end up with like 40 some odd % of passive, traditional, just regular liberals, potentially even some moderates. What I think we're going to end up seeing is that people like Michelle Caruso Cabrera, for instance, she's a CNBC anchor, former anchor and reporter and correspondent. She's going to go and rally her activist base. Keeping in mind, the voter turnout was abysmal for AOC when she ran in her primary. What that means is AOC was only able to activate a very small faction of the people who actually lived in that district. That leaves around 700,000 people. I think they actually have the full number right here. Okay, they don't. But I believe it's around 711,000. What do we have? 712,053 people. If AOC was only able to activate a tiny, tiny fraction of that, I can't imagine she can activate much more. She's famous nationally. She's raising money nationally. She is starting to walk back on Medicare for all, though, probably to try and make sure she doesn't lose re-election because we know how politicians work. But think about these individuals. You've got Fernando, Michelle, James, Bedrun, and Jose. If they each go to around the entire city and can get 20,000 people, they're beating AOC's numbers. Now, it is true they might split the vote. It also might be true that all of them are pulling in a tiny, tiny fraction. The pool of people to pull from is massive. And all these people running shows a lot of people in this district do not like Ocasio-Cortez. That says to me, there may be a problem, but if you can activate 61,000 people to vote just for you in a district of 712,000, you're looking at less than 10% of the vote to beat Ocasio-Cortez. Well, I don't know necessarily, how it will play out, but I think each of these individuals could go to key areas, light up smaller neighborhoods that have more than enough people, and get that voter turnout. The money talks. AOC's got $5 million. But I'll throw it to the very last and very, very improbable result. There is a safety net for these Democrats, or I shouldn't say for these Democrats. If you are someone who lives in New York 14 and you do not like Ocasio-Cortez, and there may be many, I'll bring you to the reason why ultimately I think she's actually facing a potential defeat. Look at what happened in the UK with Jeremy Corbyn. Districts that had not voted conservative in 100 years flipped. People would lose their minds if New York 14 turned red, but it might. You see, AOC isn't just facing outrage from Democrats. She's got, at least listen here, you've got Janae Butler, Israel Ortega-Cruz, John Cummings, Miguel Hernandez, Saoirse Murray, Ruth Papazian, Ray Solano, and Antoine Tucker, all challenging her on the Republican side. So even if she doesn't lose the primary, it's fair to say this district is a place where you slap a D on a glass of water and they win. But what if this district goes the way Jeremy Corbyn did? What if it's true that regular Democrats do not like Ocasio-Cortez? What if they're split down the middle and we see some strange phenomenon where after the Democratic primary attempt fails and AOC wins, all of those voters unite behind the Republican? And that's when things get crazy. Even in the general, A district of 712,000, AOC got 100,000 votes. So just around, what I don't know, was it 17% or something? No, wait, is it? Yeah, something like that. So we can see you have people really pushing back on Ocasio-Cortez. What if they end up voting Republican and this district turns red? It's possible. AOC once had a gaffe where she was like, we're going to flip this seat red, thinking she was talking about like socialism or whatever, but red in this country is Republican conservative. So I don't know what the Republicans plan to do. I don't know if they have a good shot to win, because when we look at the actual data, Anthony Pappas, who ran last time, only got 19,000 votes. But perhaps there's two things to consider. Conservatives in New York's 14 may be few and far between, and maybe they just don't care to vote because they think they're going to lose. But I don't think that look, if you have 720,000 people, and let's say only 20% are Republican, that's still, 140,000 votes that could have come out against AOC, and they could have won the district. If there is a small faction of Republicans, because 19,000 for the Republican, there's got to be more than 110,000 Republicans in this area, right? Or at least moderate conservatives. I can't imagine the Republicans who are running are going to be your hardcore, Trumpist, far, whatever you want to call them. There are a lot of people who are absolute, Christian conservative Trump loyalists. But you look at New Jersey, you had Bob Hugin. He was a moderate. He may as well have been a Democrat. He was pro-choice, for instance. I think it's fair to say when AOC loses moderate Democrat voters and Republican voters come out in droves to vote against her, they might actually flip this district to a Republican, which would be nuts. But we saw what happened in the UK. And James Carville, Democratic strategist, has warned it's going to happen. This could be it. And this could be a reason why. I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. YouTube.com/Timcast. And I'll see you all there.